Hello, and welcome to Mission in 5, the podcast, the show where we ask 5 simple questions to ministry practitioners to learn more about who they are and where they see God moving in their local communities. My name is Greg Mamula. I'm the Associate Executive Minister and Region Missionary for the American Baptist Churches of Nebraska. And every single week, I get to partner with churches and ministry practitioners. And I'm always amazed at the many and varied ways that God works in our individual communities and when multiple churches come together for mission and ministry. And so, that's the purpose of this podcast, to share with you the many things that God is doing and to meet some of the people participating in God's mission in Nebraska, across the country, and around the world. Our guest today is the new pastor of First Baptist Church Albion, Nebraska, Pastor Keith Brich. Now, Keith grew up in the Omaha area. His family worked in the Boys Town Dairy Farm, and he attended school in the Millard Public Schools District. His first career path was that of the information technology sector. He has a degree in the Management Information Systems from Bellevue University, and he worked in IT for several years before feeling called into vocational ministry in the early 2000s. He earned a master's degree from Grace University in pastoral leadership in 2011 and has been pastoring churches ever since. He also finds great pleasure in being a mentor in the Teammates Mentoring Program. Keith and his wife Linda have been married for 22 years, and together they have 2 daughters. Their oldest is a college student at Eastern Illinois University, and their youngest is a high school student. Now, we had a great conversation about the family, about having multiple careers and the impact of how that changes the way you look at ministry. We talked about the theology of presence and the ministry of presence, and how that affects ministry in a small town. So here's our conversation with Pastor Keith Brich of First Baptist Church Albion. Pastor Keith, it's really good to meet you and have you on the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Who are you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm Keith Brich. I'm a mid-40s guy. I've been in ministry for, it's been about 8 years now, 7 years. Been married to my wife Linda for it'll be 22 years next month. I have 2 daughters. One just graduated high school, and the other is a sophomore at the local high school here in Albion at Boone Central. And well, I don't know what else to say.
No, that's great. So I understand that you went to Grace University, but you also have a undergrad from Bellevue University.
I do. I actually have an associate's degree from Nebraska College of Business as well. They were a small junior college. I don't believe they're around anymore, but that's in computer programming. And then I went on to Bellevue and got my bachelor's degree in Management Information Systems. And I worked in the IT industry for about 12, 13 years. And one day my wife comes home from running some errands, and I told her, I said, I think I need to go back to school to get my master's degree. And she replied, that's great. That'd be more money, right? And I said, I don't think that kind of master's degree. And so I started attending Grace University and graduated a couple years later with my master's in theology or pastoral leadership. And after that, I went into ministry. My first church was with Village Missions. I was actually a missionary to rural Nebraska, a small little town in south central Nebraska. And then we moved to Illinois for a couple of years, and I'm back in Albion now.
All right.
Or back in Nebraska in Albion. And really, really happy to be home in Nebraska. We love Nebraska, and we're happy to be here. Yeah,
so you're mostly a native to Nebraska? You kind of grew up in the Omaha area?
Yeah, for the most part. I was born in western Iowa, but we moved to Omaha area when I was very young. I was about 4 years old. Mm-hmm. My dad actually worked on the Boys Town Dairy Farm there, so I kind of lived on a farm in a suburb of Omaha, if you would. And I went to Millard schools, and so I kind of had the best of both worlds as far as, we were in the city where we had a grocery store real close, but on the other hand, we're on a farm, and I got to be around animals and just all the things, do a lot of things that farm kids would experience. So it was a very good life.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a better description of what it is to live in the Omaha, Lincoln area than that. I mean, I've been here several years now, and my little neighborhood is, you make a left, you go to a cornfield, you make a right, you go to a shopping plaza. So it's a pretty good deal. So how did you tell us more about your call to ministry, and then maybe talk a little bit about how IT and ministry intersect for you?
Okay. My call to ministry was I had been working in the IT world for 11, 12, 13 years, something like that. Mm-hmm. And I've heard pastors say, if you can do anything else, you should. And really what it came down to is I came to realize that God was calling me into ministry, and I just wasn't going to be happy unless I did ministry. Mm. And it just gave me the desire. This is what I want to do. Right. And I can't tell you how many, to be honest, how many of my friends and coworkers I kind of I think I irritated because I was always talking about God with them, and I finally realized, okay, I need to get into ministry, and this is what I need to be doing. Mm-hmm. And that's when I went back to Grace University and got my degree. The IT world has opened up. My IT background has opened up a world of opportunities for me, and the fact that I've done as simple a thing as taking somebody for instance, in our church in Oak, the little town of Oak, the neighbors that did not come to church, they had a computer that needed just cleaning up and having antivirus software put on it and everything, and I spent some time, just spent a couple hours just fixing it up and getting it running smoothly for them. And what do you know? The next Sunday morning, they were in church. There you go. You show folks that you love them and you care about them, and it's amazing how they respond. And so that's one way it's provided direct opportunities to serve people in the community. Right. Another way here is I'm actually taking an online class right now through Chadron State University in order to get certified to be a local substitute teacher. In Nebraska, you can they have a local substitute where I can substitute, say, 40 days a year. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of limited, but it gives me a chance to at least get into the school system and just get to know some of the families, some of the parents, some of the teachers, and with an IT background, I'm maybe have a little bit more, I guess, real world experience as far as something that would translate to a school, as far as being able to teach some skills that might be in demand, I'm hoping. So yeah.
Well, I think it also gives you a unique way to connect, biblical theology with the very practical everyday stuff of life with people in their own context. It's not even just having the opportunity to share Christ, which is vital and something that all Christians should do, but it is a way to do it contextually in that space, in the school or in that person's home, working on their computers.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. And then, of course, not to mention, I'm working on building a website for the church right now, and it's in the very early stages. Sure. But we don't have a website until I started building it, and just being familiar with technology, I'm able to do some of that stuff.
Okay. Very good. So how did you get from feeling this call to go to Grace University and work on your master's degree in pastoral leadership, and then moving from being a missionary to a local church pastor to now being at First Baptist Albion specifically?
Well, when I was, we were missionaries with Village Missions, and part of being a missionary is that it requires you to raise support. And we figured out that we weren't very good at that. So we're just not good at asking people for money. And an opportunity came to move to a church that, I guess you'd call it, I would be more of a traditional pastor in the sense that the church would pay all of my salary versus me having to raise support for part of my salary. Sure. That came along, and we felt like we needed to do it. We felt like that's where we're being called to go to. Things didn't work out the greatest out there in Illinois, and we are back in Nebraska now. I believe God took us there for a number of reasons, and one was, well, now my daughter is going to a university in Illinois, and she never would have considered going there, I think, if we hadn't moved there.
Right.
Just to mention some of the other folks that we've met, and I think there were some life lessons that we learned from going there. So we ended up coming back to Nebraska when I saw the position listed for the church in Albion, and I responded to it. And everything about it just seems like just a wonderful fit. It fit very well doctrinally with the folks here in the church. I'm finding connections between some of the folks here and some of my lifelong friends back in Omaha.
Oh, wow.
It's kind of cool when somebody has asked me, "Oh, you know such and such?" Yeah, we've known them for 20 years. And it is interesting, some of the common relationships that we just had no idea.
Our third question is what moves you? What are your passions, your hobbies, your interests, those sort of things?
My wife would tell me that I am obsessed with white-tailed deer hunting. I love to hunt deer. I'll start bow hunting in early September when the season opens in Nebraska, and I'll probably stop hunting in January when the last rifle season's over. So
cool.
I'm always looking for a place to go hunting and to try to get a deer.
So let's talk a little bit about First Baptist Church Albion and its ministry. Maybe not everybody in Nebraska is familiar with First Baptist Church Albion. They might not have been there before. So kind of help us out. What's going on there, and what are some of the good things that God's doing in your community?
Albion is a wonderful little town of about 1,700 people. It a couple hours northwest of Omaha. It really is just a great little town, mostly a farming community. Our church is pretty much it's the only Baptist church in town.
Okay.
There's a couple there are some other churches. I have yet to, I'm trying to get to meet some of the other pastors in town and just to get to know them. I haven't had a chance yet to meet up with a few of them. But I've been out in the community a little bit and just been very welcoming as far as people in the community have welcomed us and welcomed our family in. Our church is, for instance, just this morning, one of the young ladies in our church had a Bible study here at the church with some other moms from that she met on the playground. It was a wonderful thing to see them come in and have the Bible study here. Our church is always we're looking at ways that we can reach out to the community and to become more active in the community. And they're along that line with some of the ideas that I'm personally, I mentioned, substitute teaching in the school. I'm involved in, Tom Osborne started the Teammates program 20 some years ago, and
right.
I'm mentoring a young man in the high school here as well with that. So it's really just anything we can to try to get to know some of the folks in the community.
Yeah, one of the things that I've observed over the years is when a pastor like yourself comes into a smaller community like Albion, you're not just the pastor of the people who attend on Sunday. You find ways of engaging in the community, and then the whole town sees you as their pastor, even if they're not connected to your church.
Exactly.
What are some of the other blessings and challenges to being a small town pastor in Nebraska?
I guess, you talk about that one challenge was, just this past week we were waiting for we were in a business and the line was taking a little longer and part of me wanted to complain a little bit, and then I got to realizing, I got to thinking, wow, that would be, you have to be aware of public image. And sometimes, you just don't want to be seen as that guy that might, I guess, be grumpy. Along that line, it is a wonderful thing to have to be welcome to the community or everybody in the community know who you are, for the fact that Oh, right after we moved here, the newspaper ran a little story saying we had moved into town. And
Right.
our daughter was starting school, and we're going to the open house at the school, and there were several people that said to me, "Hey, I saw your picture in the paper, and you must be the new pastor at the Baptist church." And it really was kind of neat to be able to shake hands and to greet people and introduce myself in that regard and get to know them.
Yeah.
I haven't really been here that long yet to be able to establish those relationships, but I'm looking forward to getting to know some folks and to be here when they need to talk to somebody. My first church down in South Central Nebraska that I referred to, I have had those, knocks on the door at 9:00 at night, and somebody just wants to talk to a pastor, and may seem a little inconvenient at that time, but that's sometimes how God works, and I was flattered that person was willing to reach out to me, or that trusted me to be able to reach out to me. And really, I really am about trying to establish the relationships with folks so that they can feel safe to come to me if they need something.
Yeah, and excuse me. I think it's really interesting that as you're talking about this and you're just talking about even just being in line someplace and recognizing that if you react to that situation, maybe like anybody might, a little frustrated, wishing that this would go on, but you have this ministry of presence, this theology of being Christ's presence to the community.
Very much so, and that even means the cashier at Dollar General that people know as a Christian. They should be aware of the situation or aware of the fact that people may not be fair, but people are judging us as followers of Christ.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we forget and is easily dismissed in maybe different contexts, right? So this is something unique to the small town, because there is a sense of anonymity in an Omaha or a Lincoln or even a North Platte or Norfolk, but in your place, in your context, everything you do is seen by everybody, and there's no hiding that at all, and so it's a different type of ministry.
Right. I was joking around with a fellow I had managed to harvest a deer a couple of weeks ago, and on just a few days after opening day, and I had misplaced my deer tag for a moment, and I didn't manage to, and I talked about how I really did not want to see that article in the paper talking about how local pastor arrested for poaching or local pastor cited for poaching. I mean, I made sure to get my deer tag punched right away, but for a moment there I was really kind of worried that but it's just you just have to be aware of that.
Right. Well, is there anything other interesting things happening in your life or in the ministry of Albion that you'd like us to know about?
At this point, like as I said, it's still kind of early. I'm just trying to get to know some folks around here. I think as summer, summer's winding down, harvest is going to be starting, and it gets kind of exciting to see that. Gets to be a busy time around here. Our church, we're looking at perhaps seeing if we could, start some ministries in some way, Bible studies for the younger couples in our church, or see if I can start a ministry for, like, say, the men in our church, or I want to do something to try to involve some of the younger crowd. We do have a Sunday school class that meets on Sunday morning, and we have a Sunday night service, but we're blessed as a young church that we have a number of young families that are coming to our church, and I want to try to engage them in some way and get them involved in a Bible study, either a men's group or a couple study. So we're looking forward to hopefully getting something going with that.
All right, very good. I've heard you. I just want to kind of follow up with this. Is what I'm hearing in some of your language is kind of this rhythm of the seasons, because you're connected to the agriculture of Northeast Nebraska. What are some of the ways that affects ministry in a church like Albion, where you're dealing with the rhythms of the seasons, and you're talking about harvest coming up, and that's an extremely important time and busy time for agricultural families and a city like Albion. How does that change ministry in a church like that?
Well, specifically when you're talking harvest, during the harvest time, boy, you may not see some families for a few weeks because they're just busy with harvest. Right. It's just the fact of the matter. We have a couple of farmers that in the springtime when the cattle start calving, when they start having calves, they really have to be, there may be some times when they're not able to be in church on a Sunday morning. So it can affect the numbers of folks that are in church at certain times. And there's just those challenges. It's interesting financially speaking, boy, when, if a farmer gets paid once a year, his giving to the church may be affected, as far as you may have more at certain times being given. It's of course that's almost a secondary issue, but that's just one of the things. In addition to that, I mean, right now, some of the exciting things going on is with the fall season, you got the high school football team is playing every Friday night, and that's a great way to get to meet some folks and to reach out to some folks, is just being out there and being in the crowd and getting to know some folks there, and that just that type of thing, where the different events in town.
Very good. So how can we as American Baptists partner with you?
Prayer is a big one. We would certainly like prayer, both for my wife and I and our daughter's adjustment to Albion, as well as just some of the things, some of the initiatives going into it. I don't want to be a lot of times in a small town. The guy that you mentioned, ministry in a small town, sometimes a pastor doesn't necessarily want to go too quick, and I don't want to make too many changes in too many, too quickly. But we'd like to just have some prayer as far as getting some new outreaches, or discipleship really is the focus on getting some Bible studies started and something, getting those going. I guess prayer that people would respond to those and be interested in those things.
Well, we will certainly be praying for you and Linda and the church and those new ministries and learning to become part of the community of Albion. It's been great talking with our guest today, Keith Brich, the pastor at First Baptist Church, Albion. If we wanted to reach out to you or get to know the church a little bit better, is there any way that we could contact you?
Well, the church has a Facebook page. If you do a search on Facebook for First Baptist Church and Albion, make sure you get the one in Nebraska. I guess there is one in Illinois. That's not us. Right. But they have a Facebook page. I'm in process of setting up a website. But if you did find the website, all it's got right now is the name of the church on it. We have an email address, and my email address is pastor@albionfirstbaptist.org. And you're welcome to shoot me an email, and I'd love to hear from anybody.
Very good. I thank you for your time today, and blessings on your new ministry in Albion.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you for listening to Mission in 5, the podcast. Keep tuning in as we introduce you to the ministry practitioners engaging with God's mission through the local church of Nebraska and the larger American Baptist community. Check out the show notes for links and contact information to Pastor Keith Brich and the First Baptist Church of Albion. There you'll also find links to contact me and the larger American Baptist Churches of Nebraska ministries. Subscribe to the podcast at Podbean, iTunes, and Google Play. While there, rate and review us so we know how you're enjoying the podcast. Send us ideas on who you'd like us to interview for future episodes. And feel free to support us by giving through the PayPal link on our abcnebraska.com website. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.